McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. This is the 3 keys for the Purdue game. So Nebraska's 1-4, right? That's where they're at. That's a little bit of a problem. I think the Huskers have been close in a couple of games, probably played their best game of the season against Iowa, when you really think about it. 2 fourth-quarter mistakes, a fumbled punt, and a missed protection probably are what cost Nebraska that game. Otherwise, I think that game unfolded just about as well as they could have hoped that it would. But they lost to Iowa. And the one thing that you lose when you're not playing Iowa in a rivalry game is the motivation of playing a rival. And there's also not that negative motivation per se of having played really bad against Illinois and having to sort of, atone for that. So the atonement angle's gone, the rivalry angle's gone, and what is left? What exactly is left? Well, they're playing a team in Purdue that's beaten them 2 times in a row, and I think the coaches are trying to push a let's play for a bowl angle. I think it's probably a good thing that a couple of guys from Florida left the program last week. That was a distraction and a frustration within the locker room that I think they were okay with getting rid of. And so I think the team is winnowing down a little bit into the guys who really want to be there and really want to be part of the process. Here's the problem. Purdue's not a great matchup for Nebraska. They're not a great matchup for a lot of defenses, but I think they're a hard matchup for Nebraska because Purdue's offense can put 3, 4, 5 pass catchers on the field. They're not all receivers, but they can put 3 wide receivers on the field who are all 4-star guys and all pretty darn good players. They got a pretty good tight end in Payne Durham, and they got a good pass-catching running back in Horvath. And so they can put 5 guys on a football field who are challenging to cover. It's just hard to get to deploy all of your coverage that you need to make sure that all those guys are covered up. And Purdue has had success against a lot of teams this year just throwing the football. They probably don't run it as much as they'd like. They certainly don't run it as much as Nebraska, but they are very capable of keeping drives going, especially on 3rd down, because they can find guys open. Not just David Bell and Rondale Moore, who are both NFL players, but like I said, they got a kid named Milton Wright who's good. They got a tight end, Payne Durham. He's good. They've got running backs who are good at catching the football, and they got a good scheme. And so Nebraska's not just going to be able to say, hey, Cam Taylor-Britt, hey, DiCaprio Bootle, you guys shut down those 2 receivers and we'll be good. That's not how it's going to work on Saturday. And that's key number 1. Nebraska has to find a way to slow down Purdue's passing game. They've got to get off the field on 3rd down. They're going to have to put some pressure on the quarterback, Jack Plummer. He's probably going to be the starter. And when they put pressure on him, the guys behind the defensive line are going to have to cover. They're going to have to cover in some one-on-one situations against some really talented players. If they choose not to put pressure on Plummer and they just bring 3 or 4, I'm dubious whether the pass rush is going to get home very often, 1. And 2, I think it's hard to cover those 5 guys in a zone scheme for 5 or 6 seconds. You might be a bend-don't-break kind of system, but it's still going to be hard, and Purdue runs good plays in the red zone. They got a lot of neat designs that they're able to work. So a real challenge there for Nebraska, but if they can slow Purdue's passing game down and do that via pressure, in other words, getting after the quarterback and getting him to the ground, I think they can force some punts and have some success. Key number 2, Nebraska's quarterback run game has been pretty strong all season, and this is the day when they've got to be good at that. This should be the day it pays off. If you watch Purdue's defense against Rutgers, they struggle in what you might call the all-11 run game. In other words, once you put that quarterback into the equation, they're struggling to cover all the gaps. Defensive coordinator Bob Diaco runs a 3-4 that is kind of like a mousetrap defense, not entirely unlike Bo Pelini's 4-3, but it's kind of like a mousetrap. They want to try to keep everything inside, and they want to try to limit the big gains. And the challenge with an all-11 is somewhere in there when the quarterback's running, there's a gap that doesn't get squeezed all the way down, and there's a safety that's got to make a tackle on an Adrian Martinez or a Luke McCaffrey. And that's where you hope that Nebraska can get can get some advantage, that they're able to punch through that's one of the 11 Purdue defenders does not gap it the way they're supposed to and squeeze it down, and boom, McCaffrey pops out and bounces out to run for 40. Boom, Martinez goes up the middle for 25. I think Nebraska can do that in this game. Rutgers didn't have those kind of runs with their quarterbacks, but they had a lot of success in the sense that, they had a lot of success with their quarterbacks getting 5, 6, 7 yards carry. And so I just have a sense that Nebraska can pop that and get some plays. And if they can hit a couple of those, then they're going to put themselves in position to score 24, 28 points. And that's probably where they need to be. That's probably the range they need to get to. I think it's going to be hard to hold Purdue under 21. Not sure anybody's done that this year. Purdue scored 24 against Iowa. They scored 24 against Northwestern, 30 against Rutgers. They certainly haven't played Ohio State, so you never know what they would have done there. But I think it's going to be hard to squeeze them down. I just have the impression that it'll be a little bit of a challenge. So that's the second key. The third key, and I think this is probably where the game comes down to it. Red zone, red zone, red zone. Who wins that red zone? Now, we could always talk about special teams, but we're at a point where if Nebraska makes the kind of mistakes on special teams that they've made in a couple games this year, it's going to be hard to win anyway. So I'm not going to use that as a key. I'm going to assume this game comes down to the fourth quarter. I'm going to assume both teams play pretty well, and it's probably going to come down to what happens inside that 20-yard line. And I think Purdue's got a slight advantage there. I think Nebraska's red zone defense has been very good this season, but I like some of the things that Purdue does in their red zone offense. Conversely, Nebraska's red zone offense has to have a good day. You've got to figure out a way when you get to the 17 or the 16, do you have a set of plays that can get you inside the 5? I think that's what's really hits home for me, is what are going to be the plays that get you from the 17 down to the 5? Is there a way to get, first and 10 at the plus 35 and get that down inside the 5 with a big play? And if you look back to last year, Nebraska did, struggled a little bit in the red zone once they got inside the 5, but they actually did a pretty good job against Purdue of getting down in there. And so I think that's part of the equation. One is getting down inside the 10. I think Nebraska is going to have a hard go trying to score from the 15 a touchdown. It's just tough, I think, for them right now. So they got to get inside the 10, maybe even inside the 5. And then when they get there, they've got to be able to win the physical battle. Purdue's done a pretty good job of scoring from the 17, the 16 there in those places because they have the receivers. And Nebraska's defense is just going to have to tighten up. One good thing about it is I think Nebraska's defense keeps everything in front of them. And once you get down in the red zone, that helps. You're just going to have to watch and make sure that you're slowing down that run game and that they're not getting some of those crossers, which they love to do, getting a guy crossing over the middle who's able to outrun Nebraska's players to the pylon. You got to watch what they're going to do with Rondale Moore. They like to bring Moore on jet sweeps. They like to bring him across the field. They like to bring him on quick screens. And Nebraska's secondary is just going to have to execute. Purdue's probably not going to play a lot in the middle of the field. So your nose tackle probably isn't going to be a huge factor in the game. They're going to have to play really well outside the hash marks. And in some cases with Purdue, you got to play well outside the numbers. So a different kind of game for Nebraska. I think it's going to be close. I think it's probably going to come down to a final drive like so many other games have under Scott Frost. And we'll just have to see if Nebraska pulls it off. But I think the red zone is going to be one of the keys. So first key is figure out a way to get pressure on Purdue quarterback Jack Plummer and slow down that passing game. Second key is quarterback run the ball with your quarterback and pop a couple of big runs as a result. And the third key is red zone, red zone, red zone. Do you win the situational battle inside the opponent's 20? That's all we've got. We'll have full coverage from Purdue. West Lafayette, me and Evan Bland will be there. Tom Chattel, Dirk Chatton will be watching along. So just follow along our coverage, omaha.com, Big Red Today, and the Omaha World-Herald. Thanks, Husker fans.